We are here for our first case study episode of the year, and I cannot believe it's taken me until May to release it. So I apologise for the wait, but I promise it is worth it. Today, I am being joined by Kirsty Smith from Natural Rays Hormone Health, and I'm super excited about this episode. So just to let you all know, we have recorded this conversation with anybody who has got a B2C business and is a little bit concerned about the market right now, is feeling a little bit turbulent, and you're thinking about exploring B2B but not really sure what to do. We've recorded it for anybody who's got a previously or currently successful B2B, B2C business and who is thinking, could I add a corporate revenue stream to my bow? Is it worth it? And we've also recorded it for those of you who are operating in the B2B space and just thinking, as a health and wellness provider, it's tough and I'm not really sure how to get buy-in from organizations. So as you can tell, it's been a really interesting conversation for me to have. I'm super excited to share it with you. I think that there are some absolute key points throughout the episode that you will get to learn about sales boundaries, about the confidence that you can develop, and about the shifts in the market and how that might reassess some of the time and energy that you're spending on different activities in your business. So it honestly gives me such great pleasure to have Kirsty here. And if you enjoy the episode as much as I've enjoyed recording it, please do reach out to Kirsty on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I'll pop her links in the show notes, and we've talked about it at the end as well, so that you can let her know about any breakthroughs that you had. Enjoy! Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Okay, it is our first case study episode of 2025, and I'm so excited that Kirsty, you are here on the Selling to Corporate podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. I also have to say that I'm pretty sure you are the first person with a Welsh accent that we've ever had on the Selling to Corporate podcast. So you're like repping here from Wales.
That's also criminal, if hopefully the first of many.
Exactly. Hopefully you'll inspire everybody else. Okay, so just so that everybody knows who you are and what you do, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kirsty Smith, and I'm a coach and founder of Natural Rays. And we are a wellbeing consultancy, and we focus on menstrual and menopausal health in the workplace.
And it's a really big area, I think, because over the last 5 years, we've seen major progress when it comes to menopause in the workplace and companies actually doing something for policy or to make reasonable adjustments in the workplace for menopause. But the menstrual health side is a little newer. And I don't know whether I'd be right in saying that people still feel a little bit awkward about talking about menstrual cycles at work.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are still so many feelings that certain words are like a little bit taboo and we don't often say them out loud. But the benefit is, with everything that's happened in the workplace around menopause and the awareness that has created, it is seeming more like a natural progression to then talk about menstrual health, because everything that is impacting somebody who's going through perimenopause, a lot of it still relates to periods. So it is starting to happen. And what I'm really passionate about doing is, if those organizations have some menopause awareness or some policies, maybe they're just dipping their toe in with the menopause, it makes so much business sense to start the support with your women that are menstruating, because actually a lot of women are perimenopausal, but they don't know it. So if we're having these wider conversations in the workplace around just periods or period symptoms, it engages more people that are actually going to be impacted.
And it's a huge thing because when you look at DEI overall and how that shifted, and I always look at your business and I think, yes, well-being in the first instance, but massively diversity, equity, inclusion in the second. If you look at how the landscape has changed for diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's interesting how many companies are making progress with health and wellness and other conditions that can be supported with good nutrition and good health strategies, rather than assuming that the individual is completely and solely responsible.
Yeah. And this conversation with menstrual menopausal health, it isn't just impacting that individual. And I think that's really important. Like health and well-being, there are so many different aspects to it. And there are so many things that impact how we experience it, the symptoms. So that's, again, why I love the opportunity to work with organizations, because it isn't just it fits into well-being. It isn't just it fits into something that needs to be dealt with by HR. There are many people that are interested in it within businesses.
And there's a big ROI in it, right? Like if half of your workforce or over half of your workforce is experiencing symptoms around the menstrual cycle or perimenopause or menopause itself, actually, you are supporting a massive amount of the workforce to be more productive and to feel more confident at work and potentially even to reduce absence as well.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the best performing LinkedIn posts that I ever did was actually, and you haven't had many, so it stays in my mind, was that actually menstruation and menopause impacts everyone.
Yeah.
It isn't just that 51%. Yes, there's that direct impact, that lived experience. But then if we extend it out, everybody is being impacted, whether that's a colleague that is struggling. So the team around them is having to, pick up where maybe time frames are slipping, or they're not feeling confident in meetings. Or actually, is it men in the organization that have a wife at home that is also struggling, that, they then have to do more of the caring responsibilities, or things are shifting. So it's not just the direct ROI in terms of the person that's experiencing the symptoms. It's like, who are the people around them that are also being impacted by that person experiencing the symptoms? And that's not to say that that person's to blame at all. This is something that we just all experience, but it's just to have that awareness that it is more than just the personal lived experience.
And it's that blend of the personal. I was going to say the personal bleeds, but that is an unintentional pun. Personal bleeds into the professional though, right? And so, like you say, all of those people being impacted on a personal level, however that is, whether it's themselves as the individual or themselves as the supportive partner or whatever, they're then bringing that to work in some way, shape or form. That's really, really cool. And I guess my first question really is, did you always think that you would end up working with organizations, or was it a bit of a strange consideration for you?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I'll say this now, and I'll say it. I wish I'd have considered it sooner, but it wasn't how my business started. And, since being part of the C-suite, my business has definitely grown in that aspect. But for a long time, the majority of the, how my business grew was working with individuals. And I think that was a necessary step, because that's where I, honed my skills and my expertise, and actually working directly with the individual, actually understanding what is impacting them, how is that impacting the people around them. And then it felt like a natural step to then go, well, this makes a lot of sense. Where are all these women naturally? They're all more or less in the workplace in some shape or form. So it made a lot of sense to me, especially with the cost of living, with people having to really look at their individual finances more and say, whilst health should be our top priority, because without health, we have nothing. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case.
Mm.
And sometimes, where we have, with the services that I'd offer direct to individuals, that isn't something that like health insurance or, we can get under the NHS. So it is coming out of their own pocket. So I was actually thinking, well, how can I work with organizations in a way that then means I get to work with more women and people that menstruate? I get to have more impact, but it's not necessarily the individual that feels that they can't access the service. So that's how I initially started to think about it, was this is actually a way for me to have more of an impact without it being a difficult thing to justify, which is what I was finding a lot with individuals.
And what I really like there is that you're not shaming people. I think there's, and particularly in the health market, there is a common conversation that happens that is health is wealth. If you're not doing anything about your health, you just want to be sick, and you're not investing in it. And I always feel, as somebody who has a chronic illness, I'm always a bit like, I have been to those experimental treatments with people who have done everything possible and got rid of everything possible in their life to go and try something that they thought might help. And I think that conversation is really tricky, because obviously it's completely accurate. Your health is your wealth, but also, particularly in the current market conditions, you're exactly right. The cost of living crisis is impacting individuals. And I think coming at it from that impact perspective to begin with is really practical, as in, how can I support more women and get paid myself? Because obviously you can't be working for free, but also is really indicative of that big picture corporate impact. As in, I think we can get sold the dream sometimes in the B2C space that is, if you're not working with individuals, you're not doing it right. And I think it's really interesting that your B2C business almost gave you all of the research and the tools and the practical hands-on experience to be like, right, well, let's go and take this to more women who are struggling, or more people that menstruate who are struggling.
Yeah, exactly. And it, like I said, it just made a lot of sense to me. And I completely agree with what you're saying. There is a lot of shaming in the wellness space around, like, you should try harder. You're obviously not trying hard enough yourself. And I'm like, I know for a fact that that is not the case. We're actually just really overwhelmed. And I think going back to the impact, actually it's acknowledging that employers have a responsibility. Like, gone are the days where we were expected to turn up to work and, like, I don't know how they ever expect us to turn up to work and put everything that happened outside of work. Like, I think we're acknowledging now that everything kind of blends into one, especially with, the way that we work having changed, and also the expectations that we have from our employer. And when we talk about the things that impact our health, we cannot, look away from the fact that our employment, how we work, where we work, has an impact on our health. So it just seemed like a natural progression for me to, one, want to work with individuals within their companies that they work for, but also another level that I think has been a more recent development in my business is actually working with the organizations so that they can set up structures for their employees that is most supportive.
I love that. And it's funny because actually one of the organizations that I've been working on a retainer with over the last probably 13, 14 months, to create a sales academy for them. They joked when I first went into their offices, they were like, oh, when we first started out, we used to offer people toast. We would provide toast for breakfast. They were like, now, if you open the cupboards, there's like 20 different types of milk and cereals and protein options and fruit. And I was like, you must be spending a fortune every single week on breakfast. And they were like, yeah, but, we realized that if people are fueled, they're going to work properly. And I thought, do you know what? 10, 15 years ago, you just wouldn't have seen it. Like, they wouldn't have cared. They'd have been like, well, fuel yourself, go to Pret on the way in. But here they were providing all these options for different tastes, for different nutritional needs, all of that kind of thing. And I just thought, well, that's phenomenal, like the change.
Yeah, exactly. And it's acknowledging that those efforts actually go a long way. And also, if you think about breakfast, it's getting people into the office quicker. If they don't have to make breakfast at home, then they'll probably like either get in on time or maybe they'll come in a little bit earlier. Who knows? And it's, there's so many benefits that comes with that. I remember working for an organization and they used to do the same thing. And lots of people then congregate in that area, making their toasts and their cereal and their coffees. And that's when you kind of get that team building that wouldn't necessarily happen if maybe you didn't have those types of things.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to go and tell them that a nutritionist has certified that they're doing all the right things.
I'd love to look at what they're providing, and I'm sure I could offer some suggestions, but it's a great start.
I love it. So I guess the thing for me then is to let people understand what the biggest differences are between selling B2B and selling B2C, because you're somebody who's sold and continues to run a B2C revenue stream really successfully. And I think one of the biggest things I always get asked is, can you do both? And what are the differences?
Yeah, and that's a question that I had asked you. I was literally like, should I do both? Like, is it possible? And I've set my business up in a way now that, the B2C is still there. I have a membership, so it's nothing is passive. I hate using that word, but it's been built. And, I still market it. I still have people coming in and out. And I still take on one-on-one individual coaching clients. So that's the aspect of my B2C business. And a lot of the marketing for that has always been driven through my social media. And that is exhausting. Providing that type of marketing, I found very exhausting after a number of years doing it. So for me, the difference of coming in and having work, and I dabbled before I invested in the C-suite, I dabbled in the corporate side of things. I was going to networking and I got a few clients mainly through networking. That was the most success that I'd had. But I was at a loss of what do I do? What do I do consistently? So what I loved about the process that you talk us through in the C-suite is that, there are many different ways to do business development, but you pick the one that you want to and you follow it through, and there's a strategy and you stay consistent. And it was really clear what needed to be done, the metrics that we were following. And I just found it was just really nice every day. I just knew what I needed to do instead of it being every day getting up and saying, what do I need to post today? How is that post done? And it was refreshing. It was the shift that I needed because I was getting very exhausted with the B2C marketing.
And I suppose it's the same as what you've done for your clients over the years, because everybody wakes up in the morning and they're like, oh, I need a protein breakfast, but what do I have? And in that spiraling moment where you're like, I don't know what to do, I'll just chug another packet of cereal or Cheerios or whatever it is. I think, them having things like those recipe ideas, it just means that the opportunity to fail is limited because you're given the strategy and you're given the templates and just all you have to do is show up and do. That's possibly quite different from the B2C space where, because things are so changeable, all of the time you're playing the algorithm, the trends, what people like, who people like, baffling. It's a popularity contest in places now, which is just terrifying to me. I guess, have you noticed anything different about the way that clients work with you? Is there a difference between B2C and B2B in terms of the way that they buy or the way that they value pricing and things like that?
Yeah, I suppose what has been quite refreshing is being quite open about what I will and will not do. And I think this has developed from doing the B2C stuff as well. But in terms of, just being very clear about the information that they want, the transformation that they want, and just being really open, like, well, what is your budget? And I've really surprised myself in that I've been in front of, big organizations that I really would love to work with. And they're like, oh, we don't pay for that. And I've said, oh, I don't actually do that for free. and I've surprised myself. And I think before that, I probably would have been like, oh, well, these are a really big organization. They were saying, well, potentially you'll get one-on-one clients from it. And I just sort of said, that actually doesn't work. That actually never pays off. So whilst, if that's the way that you do things, that's not how my business runs. And that didn't stop a conversation. I thought that would have been like, oh, well, that was nice. The conversation carried on. And I think I felt proud of myself for having that boundary, but also that then we were looking at other ways that they were, where were the other pots of money? So that's not available normally in a conversation with a B2C. There is no like, oh, what about a credit card? Or what about, it's a very different conversation where you can say, okay, well, you're in X team or you're part of, I work with a lot of networks, which is a challenge in itself.
Oh, yeah, because the budget for networks are, limited. Let's say limited.
Exactly. Limited, non-existent. So then it's like, okay, well, who else needs to be involved in this conversation?
Yeah.
And that's what's different is that often I don't normally pay for that, where the B2C would be like, oh, well, that's, yeah, there might be some objection handling, but not in the way that you can see potential opportunities with a B2B. Where are the other stakeholders? Who else might be interested in this transformation? Okay, it's not you. Let's have a different conversation with a different person. So that's one thing that, again, has been really refreshing is that, and I think, just coming to the recent in-person day and having the reminder that a no doesn't always mean a hard no. It means like, okay, great, I acknowledge what you've said. Let's look at, are there other opportunities? So that, I would say, is probably one of the biggest differences in buyer decisions.
And I think that's huge. I think there are two things there that are massive for me, like as an outsider looking in. One is that boundaries piece, because I think that so often when you're a solo business owner, you're almost taught from the beginning that the customer is always right and you have to do what's going to make the customer happy at the price that's going to make the customer happy. And you almost live in this fight or flight mode of, well, if I don't do this thing, I might not get any other clients. And so that leads to that doing things for free for exposure or undercharging or, that's B2C and B2B. People have those experiences. I think having those sales boundaries actually gives you more respect in the process. When you're saying to a big organization, it's nice you want to give me exposure, but like, I can't eat that. So let's figure this out. There's an immediate decision on their part to give you the respect that you are due as the expert in your field and be like, oh, well, actually, I wouldn't want to not be paid either. Let's see how we can figure that out. The second piece is the confidence. I think a lot of people listening to this would be like, oh my gosh, Kirsty, I would never turn around to an organization and be like, no, I will not do this thing for you for free. Because it's really scary to turn around and say, yeah, I'm not interested in pursuing the relationship that you're setting out. What I'm interested in doing is seeing how you can pay me for the value that I'm going to add. And I think that takes a lot of confidence, particularly when, like you say, you've come from that B2C space, where if you even suggest that somebody finds an alternative way to invest in something, they freak out. They're on the internet before you can say anything going, oh my gosh, I spoke to Jess and she suggested I sell my kidney for a place on a course. And you're like, no, I was just...
Yeah.
And I do think that really puts people off consultative objection handling in that B2C space because they're so worried that they're going to get cancelled for saying to somebody, okay, cool, is this really a budget thing or is it you just don't want it and you don't know how to say it?
and that's a really tricky thing in the B2C world, to have that conversation, especially if a lot of it is happening, and it does happen in your Instagram DMs, for instance. And everyone's always like, you don't need to jump on a call. You sell everything in your DMs. So I'm like, that's true, but it's like, you can, but it's very challenging. Like, you don't know. And I think we've talked about this a lot. It's like, you don't know how that message is going to be read. You could 100% really leave a sour taste in somebody's mouth. And that never sits right with me, because I've been on the receiving end of it. And I'm like, to me, in a B2C world, that's quite a pushy sales strategy where you're like objection handling. And it's like, well, you obviously just don't want it enough. You obviously don't care about your health enough. So you're going to continue to suffer for the rest of your life. So good luck with that. And I'm just like, that's not nice. So yeah, it's nice to move somewhere where objection handling doesn't feel icky. And I think that's the big thing. And that's been a huge transition, just, doing this from a B2C perspective, then B2B. It's like sales doesn't feel icky. And it's transferred back the other way, where I've built my confidence in a B2B perspective of I've put these fee proposals out. They've been scary. It's been a scarier number that I'm used to, but they've been accepted. Then the work's been delivered and it's been positively received. Then we're talking about additional work. This is all just building my confidence of then when I am still working in the B2C world, I appreciate my value and I'm confident in more. I am more confident in objection handling where people are like, that's not within my reach at the moment. And that's why I have tiered levels of offers. So that if it's not that right fit for them on a one-to-one basis, which is a higher investment, that's why I have a membership, which you can cancel at any time because I want people to be able to access information. But I also want them to not just consume information on Instagram because you won't take any action on it. So there's like a small exchange of money that needs to happen for you to actually be invested in the process.
Yeah, of course. Like, you don't invest, you don't implement. Like, I think it was Russell Brunson, he first coined that. So if you're listening to this, don't think it's some genius thing I said, it wasn't. But, I think the interesting thing about, if you come back to the money piece, is that corporates aren't attached to it because it isn't that individual decision maker's cash. So they're like, well, sure, we might as well do the big, this all singing, all dancing thing than the initial piece, because they're like, it's not my money. All I need to do is produce a business case to say that it's going to get us a transformation that we want. Whereas, like you say, when you're selling to individuals, especially in this market, you do have to have tiered offers. And actually that is a lot. As a solo business owner, even having tiered offers is a lot of work to do, let alone selling multiple offers and then trying to do that in whatever the right way is for the individual. Like, it's just a lot of headspace and it's a lot of time.
It is a lot of headspace. And the point that I'm at now is I'm trying to lean into, where do I actually enjoy showing up? And I'm finding more and more for me at the moment. And it goes back to what you said at the beginning, where it's almost like a popularity contest. It's like being on the bloody playground again, where you're like, do they like me? Do they not? And I'm like, I think I'm a bit too old for that now. Like, that's why I've wanted to kind of move away from marketing solely on social media, because it doesn't make me feel good. When I show up there, it takes away from, it takes my brain power away from other things, which is another reason why when I came into the C-suite and I knew what I needed to do, I jumped into it and I followed it. Yeah, it took me probably a little bit longer than it should have, but I just loved it. Some people would be like, oh God, it's so boring. I was like, I loved it. I just put my music on. I just copied and pasted, did my thing. And I was like, this is really nice. And then you get a response back and you're like, this is great. Whereas like Instagram is constantly like refreshing. Does somebody like it? No, that post flopped. I thought it was going to do so great. Everyone hates me. And it like really spirals.
Yeah.
So again, like for me, that's why I think it's been a really nice switch up. It's been the switch up that I've needed to know that there are other ways to build a business. Because for a very long time, I was just like, this is the only way to do it. And this is how I have to do it. So that's for me has been really important. And it's had a positive impact outside of just my business, which is really important to me. It's the reason I started working for myself, was I wanted flexibility. And whilst I probably work more,
Everyone,
there is flexibility. I take days off. I take hours in the day to go to the beach because I live on the coast, whereas I couldn't do that in employment. So, and I think that's, again, like I said, that is a really important aspect of my business, is what does it allow me to do outside?
I think that's such an important conversation, because I think, especially in your first 2 years in business, it can be really easy to almost burn yourself out doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing. And because you're afraid to let go of any work, or, have revenue months that aren't as stable and things like that, because most people don't build a sales process. They're just like, oh gosh, it's constantly feast famine. You forget that that wasn't the purpose of the business. You didn't build one to sit in that high adrenaline, high cortisol, stress. Oh my gosh, I must think about work every second of the day. Unfortunately, without having a sales process that works, that's where most people end up. And then you are just in that cycle. I think the point you made there about marketing on social media is so interesting. I think one of the big things that I see about the way that I dislike social media is that mental health and capacity piece. You know, as somebody who has ADHD, I'm like, oh gosh, I can make a post, fine. But it's everything else that comes with it that is draining and, you know, for my brain, boring. But I think that there's such a big conversation to be had around how marketing on social media is impacting mental health for entrepreneurs, because I don't see anybody who's putting stuff out on Instagram and Facebook and whatever being like, oh, but I love this so much. I'm always so positive about the way that I'm impacting through content. Like, it's just a constant rush to find the next big viral post and not really ever knowing whether that will bring you cash or not.
And I think that was the huge thing for me. And I had to really take a bit of a hard look at it and be like, I'm spending so much effort, time, mental capacity. It's not bringing me what I should be having for this level of effort. Whereas, and I think that goes back to the difference in process as well. Like, working on a B2C perspective is very much like, what am I launching? This is another launch. This is the 5 weeks of emails, blah, 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 to launch this thing. And that I found very exhausting. Whereas in the sales process, it's like, okay, we've got 90 days. These are the numbers. This is what we're going to do. How did that work? What's next? It never felt like we were on a runway to this huge, like, takeoff to something. Yeah. It was just consistently there, ticking over in the background. And through doing one lot of it myself, it's then been like, right, how can I refine that? How can I get somebody else to take this on? And then I can do the more impactful stuff. So every sort of 90 days since being part of the C-suite, it's been like, right, what's the refinement with that? How can that be improved? How can this be automated in a certain way? Whereas I never felt that personally in my B2C business. I was like, okay, that trend didn't work. That launch didn't work. So again, I think it was working with somebody that knows that there's a strategy that works and that you're surrounded by other people that are also doing the same strategy. We're sharing ideas. We are hearing what's working for other people. And I can't stress enough how being part of the community has motivated me in times when I just feel like, is it possible? Like, I'll be completely honest, like, working in what's predominantly women's well-being can be like you are banging your head against a brick wall sometimes. It's not always the easiest yes, even for organizations. And that can be demoralizing. But what is helpful is having a network around you of people that are working in similar spaces, doing things slightly different. And they're like, no, it's there, it's possible, and seeing what's possible. And it motivates you to carry on and not, that you do have down days, it's normal. But then you kind of see the other people sharing and you're like, right, that's what I'm working towards. It is possible. The organizations are out there. And, having you to help, is it something to do with my messaging? Or is it that this isn't, it's just this one type of organization, for instance? Yeah. So I think that's been incredibly motivating and inspiring for me to just know, no, just carry on. This is, you'll always have those organizations that don't see or struggling to see the value initially.
I think that's such a great point. We can be really guilty of thinking it's every organization or everyone doesn't get it or doesn't see the value when one person in one organization comes back. And you're right, having the community of the C-suite around, it's lovely to see people progressing so that you're motivated and inspired, but also like people sharing how they've overcome those situations, because everyone comes up against the budget objection at some point and everyone comes up against that it's not a priority. And for me, the thing that I like best about the community is that everyone's sharing, okay, well, last time this happened to me, this is what I did, and this is how we reframed it. And this is where, it started to look different, or the organization suddenly was able to turn it around or find money, or having that in your back pocket it's like having 600 people who are just like, oh, we'll try it this way, like, and
Yeah.
giving you words and things that have worked. I absolutely love that. And I guess it segues us perfectly onto my next question, which is, if somebody is out there on the fence thinking, I think I want to join the C-suite, but it is a big investment, and all of the things that go into that, how do I know it's going to work for me? How do I know that it's going to be the right fit? Like, what would you say to them?
Well, as that person that sat on the fence for probably, I would say, like a good 12 months, just being like that lurker. And I love it when people are open about this, because I have a lot of people are like, yeah, I lurked. I lurked around for a little bit. And I'm like, great. Like, that's also me. I do a lot of lurking and I do a lot of last minute decision making. Like, I understand. It's exactly what I did. Like, one of my friends referred me into the C-suite or told me about it, told me what she was doing. I was like, this sounds great. But it was the investment. I was a bit apprehensive of the investment. And honestly, now that I've been inside the C-suite since like September, and have just like, I would say I just jumped straight in and I've been involved with as much of it as I can be. I was just, I knew I would say it, and I wish I'd done it sooner. I really do wish that, and I knew this would happen, but we had a lot of back and forth about it as well. But I think it just happened at the right time. Things aligned, and it happened at the right time. But what I would say is that if you are looking for a way to have things streamlined for you, to essentially just have the resources that says, this is how you should do it. If you've got, 90 days, give this a go, follow this to the T. And what I really loved about this process, and it's when I talk about the C-suite, this is one of the things that I say to them. I'm like, I love Jess because she's no nonsense. And she's like, don't talk to me unless you've done this for 90 days. And I'm like, I love that. And I've actually like employed that a little bit with my clients. Like, it's tough love. It's what you don't want to hear it. I want you to sit there with me, Jess, and say, oh, you've only done 50 contacts. Oh, okay, let's look at it. But you're like, no, I'm not even going to I'm not even going to consider it until you've done this and you've done it as I've told you that it's going to work. And then we can look at the numbers. And I find that really refreshing because it's so clear. I know what I need to do. I know the numbers I need to look at. And then I know how to review it and decide what I'm going to do next. So I would say to anybody that's like just wanting to have a streamlined sales process, but also to have people around you that are doing it, could be in the same sector, could be in a different area. But again, we share so many ideas. You definitely will not regret the investment. And even if you just came in and used all of the amazing templates, again, you're going to get so much value just from that alone. Like, there's so much great content and resources that I've not even like touched. I feel like I've literally scratched probably about 10%, but I'm so focused. I'm so hyper focused on what I need to do. And I'll turn up to the group trainings that we'll have. And that's where I learn best. I like just focus on what I need to do at this moment, because there are so many resources in there. And I know this because I've built platforms as well. So you've just got to put your blinkers on. What do I need to do? That's all I've got to focus on. And I love the way that it's sort of like 90 days, because that's how I work. I work in 90-day segments with everything that I do with my own clients as well. So yeah, I think that was
like I
my
built
long answer.
Like, clearly my 90-day sprint thing, I was like, I had Kirsty in mind when like 5 years, like, I'm just going to put this thing together and see what happens.
Yeah. But it's like, it's a nice, because you would think like 90 days, that's a long time, but it comes around so quickly. But it's like, it's wonderful to see how much can be achieved and how many great conversations can come out of 90 days. Yeah. And actually, when I started, I didn't have very many emails. So like the thought of writing a newsletter, I was like, well, how am I going to get these email addresses? Could it have taken me such a long time in my B2C business? Yeah. It's so different now. And I've already got, like, not that I've sent a newsletter yet. It's on my list of things to do this year. But I've got the contacts there now. And it's all through the process that you've helped us with, which I just love.
I'm so proud of you. I really am. Like, you've absolutely taken the C-suite by storm and used and implemented. And, you know, maybe that's because you come from a health background and people in health are used to implementing. I don't know. In sales, we're not as used to implementing, so it takes a bit longer. But it's that kind of thing. And I think you've done so well in terms of, you know, the confidence piece, the boundaries piece that we talked about earlier, but also, you know, just really getting to grips with a new market and delivering in a new way that is impacting way more people than, you know, arguably the stuff that you've always had to do on Instagram or, you know, in that B2C space, because you're just touching so many more lives in the trainings that you deliver. And I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, well, please, before we wrap up, because I genuinely think this is one of the most powerful episodes we've ever recorded. So if you're somebody who was a previous case study participant and you're listening to that, and don't be offended, like, you're all great, but this is really good.
It's the Welsh accent.
Exactly. Tell everybody, you know, where they can connect with you. So if you are listening and you're thinking, actually, I know an organisation that needs to go and get some support and training from Kirsty, where can people find you? How can they refer you?
Yeah, so obviously from like the B2B space, definitely find me on LinkedIn, Kirsty Smith, and if you look for Natural Rays, you'll find me there. If I see, like, most people are on Instagram, even from like an individual perspective. So I do, you know, I am still very active on Instagram as well. So I'm Natural Rays Hormone Harmony on Instagram. And yeah, to please reach out if this has resonated. And also, I'm just so open to having conversations with anyone that is on the fence about the C-suite, because it's always nice to actually hear from the horse's mouth about like what it's like. But what I've shared here is the truth, and I've referred so many people. I'm trying to refer so many people into the C-suite because I just value it so much. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for all the support that you offer to us as well, Jess. It's really incredible.
I really appreciate having you as part of the community, and I appreciate you opening the doors to people asking you questions, because otherwise it could be like I was sat here with a fork to your eye or something. Like, no, Kirsty, only say good things. But I promise you that is not what I've done here. Thank you so much for coming on today. Honestly, it's been absolutely incredible. I really appreciate it. And we'll get all of your links in the show notes as well. So if you do know organisations that need Kirsty in their lives, please do go onto LinkedIn and recommend or refer her. But also, if you've had breakthroughs from this episode and the conversation that we've had today has made you think differently about your business, again, please reach out to Kirsty on Instagram, on LinkedIn, you know, wherever your favourite platform is, because actually, you know, anyone who comes onto the podcast is giving up their time to share their journey with you. So if it has made an impact, it's always really nice to hear about it, and it's always really generous of you to share it. Thank you so much for coming on, and I will see you all in the next episode.